Hello, YouTubers out there. This is Jerry Saravia at the movies. So today we're talking about Indiana Jones 5, the fifth, obviously, Indiana Jones adventure that is scheduled to be released in July of 2022. Now, I have done updates on the regular for many years about this movie. I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan, and I like all four films. Of course, that includes Crystal Skull, which I guess is seen as the Jaws, the revenge of the series, but that's rather unfortunate. So, I haven't discussed much lately because I had the feeling in the last couple of years that this movie probably would not be happening because it had one too many delays. Not to mention the script and one writer, David Coep, losing his chance to come up with a script that met everybody's approval. And previous writers already, that included Lawrence Kasdan's son, I believe, who was going to be writing, and that fell through. So quite a few writers fell through. Then the news was released late last year that Steven Spielberg would not be directing. So then I thought, oh, geez, this is not good. This is not a good sign. Clearly, this is just not going to happen. If Spielberg is not directing, this movie isn't happening. You already don't have George Lucas's involvement. Because obviously the franchise is now beholden to Mickey Mouse to some degree. Paramount Pictures still has distribution. So, what on earth was going to happen? Well, the news came out that James Mangold was going to be directing. Many people know him as the director of Logan and Ford versus Ferrari. Now, to be fair, I've not seen these films. I knew James Mangold when he first burst into the screens, or into the scene, if you like, in 1996 when he did a small film called Heavy, which was his feature film debut as a director. And in that film was Pruitt Taylor Vince as this heavy guy who works in a restaurant. Shelley Winters playing the mother, and Liv Tyler was in the film along with Debbie Harry. It's a very good film. Then he did the film Copland, which I didn't care for, and Girl Interrupted, which I really didn't care for either, although I admire his efforts. So I didn't really see a James Mangold film since then that I know of. He just, not that he fell out of favor with me, but I just didn't really see any of these films. So I'm curious to see these two in particular, Ford versus Ferrari and Logan, even though I'm not a huge comic book fan or a huge fan of X-Men, but that's neither here or there. So, Mangold is going to be directing. I imagine he was chosen because of Ford versus Ferrari, or because he did Logan. I really don't know. And he's bringing along his own cinematographer, Faden, I believe is his name, Papa Michael. And let's see. Then he also brought his own writers along to work on a script that I guess he's worked on with them before, Jez and John Henry Butterworth, both who had collaborated on the script for Ford versus Ferrari. So now I'm obviously quite interested in what this is going to be. So all we know so far is Harrison Ford, of course, is playing Indiana Jones. There have been two new casting additions that were announced. Mads Mikkelsen, who many of you may know from playing Hannibal on television, Hannibal Lecter, but I know him best. He was a terrific villain in Casino Royale, the James Bond movie with Daniel Craig. And then there is Thomas Crutchman, who also joined. Now, I know him as the Nazi who saves a Jewish person's life from the film The Pianist, and he was also in King Kong. I haven't really seen anything else with him that I know of, but who knows. So those are two exciting additions, to be sure. Not to mention a controversial one, apparently, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who I know had created a show called Fleabag, which, once again, I'm curious to see, and voiced, I think, a droid on the film Solo, a Star Wars story. So she's somehow in the Mickey Mouse world, so to speak. So those are the three cast members that have been announced. Of course, their roles have not been announced. Nobody knows who they're playing just yet. And of course, we know Harrison Ford, who's going to be 78 years old, will play Indiana Jones. We know the film is more likely going to be set in 1960s. Steven Spielberg made that clear about a year and a half ago in a podcast interview, so we know all that. Now, but the interesting thing, Steven Spielberg will still serve as producer. But what does this mean for an Indiana Jones picture not being directed by Steven Spielberg? And regardless of what you say about Crystal Skull, it has all the hallmarks of a Spielberg movie, not to mention a Indiana Jones movie. So what you have now is a director that is, to a certain extent, perhaps, going to ape the style of Spielberg. That is to say, if you're going to have cliffhanger stunts, Spielberg kind of made that thing his own. He just did. Because the Indiana Jones movies, certainly the first couple, anyway, of them, Raiders and Temple of Doom, set the standard for cliffhangers. There hasn't really, believe it or not, there hasn't really been movies outside of the Indiana Jones series that showed a character overcoming one obstacle after another that quickly in a short amount of time, and then moving on to the story, and then establishing more and more cliffhangers in that nature. It's just not, it's not something that even the Indiana Jones ripoffs managed to do nearly as well, or even tried to do. It's an art in and of itself belonging to Spielberg. He made that style what it was. So I thought the most logical choice would have been J.J. Abrams, who can definitely make a Spielberg movie, even though it's not directed by Spielberg, that would be Super 8, which I really liked. But, you know, it feels like a Spielberg movie from the 1980s that just was released back in 2011. So we don't know where this is headed, or what the story's going to be, or the style of the film. I think that's really the key, the style of the film. And it won't, he won't have, Spielberg won't, or I should say the movie probably will not have the usual editor, whose name escapes me right now. I can't think of his name, but the editor won an editing Oscar for Schindler's List back in the day. But he edited all the Indiana Jones pictures and most of Spielberg's films. So we don't know the style of the film. That's going to be the key. What will be the style of it? Will they try to mimic what has been there before, or are they going for a whole new approach? We don't know. I'm excited to find out. I'm open to them doing anything that they want to do. I think that the films, each one of them, stands apart from the other because regardless of the similarities, in terms of the characters and the situations, it is really the story that matters, because they did develop the character, particularly after Last Crusade. So I can only imagine where they may take this. So it may be a good sign. I don't know. I haven't seen James Mangold's last couple of pictures, so I can't really comment on his style. I only remember the first 3 films I saw of his back in the 90s. And certainly when you see those 3 films, and let me reiterate again what they are: Heavy, Copland, and Girl Interrupted, you don't think, oh, now there's a guy who can make an Indiana Jones picture. But maybe these last couple, who knows, he might have. So that's the latest on this, and I think I'll regularly discuss whatever's coming up. I've been trying to shy away from discussing projects that are only in their infancy, so to speak. In other words, I don't want to be too critical because I don't really know. Until you see the final result, you really never know. So I don't want to sound like one of those that has a movie figured out before they even roll the cameras. That wouldn't be, it's not fair. I've done that before, and I don't think it's always workable to do that. But I can at least discuss the choices and see where they might be going. As I said, we don't know who these cast members are going to play. There's a good chance Mads Mikkelsen might play a villain. We don't know. Thomas Crutchman might be the villain, but we don't know that either. Or it might be Phoebe Waller-Bridge who plays a villain, but of course we really don't know that either. So We don't know if Karen Allen is returning to play Marion, which, of course, they got married at the end of Crystal Skull. So whether or not Shia LaBeouf more than likely will not appear, but you never know. Anyway, this is Jerry Saravia at the Movies, signing off.